Good evening, everyone. How are we doing? Mr. Kittymer, Mr. Butcherish, Freak Show, Strange, thank you for being here so early into the podcast. How y'all doing?
Greetings and salutations, gentlemen. How are we all today?
We have yet another fun-filled podcast with you featuring latest news, reviews, trailers, as well as a live interview with the head of PC game publishing at HeroCraft and producer of Revival Recolonization.
Yeah, so if you watch us regularly, we know we'd like to have a bit of writing the people that we interview. So, we've had a couple of indie devs on. Last week we had a YouTuber in Slopes Games Room. This year we've got Vasiliy Tedeev. I'm probably going to pronounce that wrong, and I'm drinking, so I'm just going to call him V all day. He said that's okay. He's got a wealth of experience in project management, game producing, and monetization in games.
So while we are still looking at indie game in Revival Recolonization, God, that gets me every time.
We just call it Revival.
Revival, there we go. We expect this interview to look more at the business side of indie game development instead of the game development side. We hope this will help anyone thinking of making their own game or give gamers a better insight on how the game industry works.
Yeah, and as with all our live guests, V will be more than happy to answer any of your questions. But in the previous weeks, we've lost your questions in the chat when it's got busy. So this week, we're going to ask that you highlight the questions so that we don't miss them.
They are literally only 10 channel points, guys. I've made it cheap as I possibly can for you to do. It's so we, again, like you said, so we don't miss them.
Feature of the day Badger doesn't have a drink is the day the world will end. Oh, definitely, good sir, definitely.
Sean is waiting for the roll-up. Sean's waiting for the roll-up.
I'm waiting for the roll-up. This week, I've met them in advance. Not only early, we are prepared.
Anyway, without further ado, it is our pleasure to introduce our guest this week, V. Hello.
Hey guys.
Greetings, sir. How are you?
Awesome. Enjoying the good weather here in Kaliningrad, Russia, and I hope it's the same for you guys.
It's been quite nice here in Leeds today. It's been raining, which has been quite welcomed after 3 weeks of roasting sun.
Okay, so it's going to go the other way around.
Yeah, you'll get it in a couple of days.
Yeah, because every time I went out, let's say go to a park in Sheffield, you always bring an umbrella with you, like always. Because it can be sunshine 1 minute, and then 5 minutes later, just pouring rain.
Yeah.
Always got me. Always got me.
That's the wonder of Yorkshire. You never go out without an umbrella.
Yeah.
So this is V from HeroCraft Games. Like to introduce yourself to the viewers, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Sure. And again, that was a good pronunciation, by the way. So I'm Vasiliy Tedeev, but these probably easier to pronounce. And over the past 9 years, I've been working in the games industry. Been fortunate enough to work with a variety of teams just across the world and to see for myself how games are made in both sides of the industry, both publishing and development. And here I am today talking to you guys about Revival.
So you graduated from the University of Sheffield with a BA in Business Administration and Management. What was the journey that took you from Russia to the beautiful green rolling hills of West Yorkshire?
Well, I guess the journey started with my family, my dad deciding to move from Moscow to Cyprus for one reason or another. And I studied there and I graduated from the International School of Paphos. And like our educational system was UK based, we did IGCSEs. So it only made sense after I graduated to look to England, UK for my university degree. Mm-hmm. And that's where I went. And to be honest, this isn't a plug. I really did enjoy my time both in Sheffield and at the University of Sheffield. And I would still recommend anybody you guys considering going there. It's an awesome place. It's a good place.
I actually had a friend that went to Sheffield Uni and he said the exact same thing. So there we go.
I mean, it's in God's Green County. Of course it's wonderful.
Look, you're just biased because you're a northerner. I'm a southerner. Let's not get into this argument.
I'm not biased because I'm a northerner. I'm correct because I'm a Yorkshireman.
Hard to argue with that, actually.
Anyway, let's get back to it. So, how did you graduate? How did you go from graduating university to a career in a game industry?
Well, I always wanted to work in the games industry. You know, when you talk to your mates and you go like, "Oh, I want to do movies, I want to do games." So I kind of knew that since high school. And when I went back from to Moscow, I just applied for jobs in the games industry. It's as simple as that. And after 3 months of looking, searching, going to interviews, I guess I got lucky and I got accepted. And I specifically went and I preferred publishers rather than game developers because I always knew I want to do games. I want to create games. But like even back then, I understood, rightfully so, like looking back at it, that it's not just enough to create a good game. You also have to learn and know how to actually gain visibility for that game, right? Otherwise, all of your efforts may just go to waste, be in vain.
Yeah.
I wanted to avoid that, so I specifically sought out publishers, and I got, my first job was at a publishing company.
And I suppose that's where your business degree comes in handy as well, like
Oh yeah.
selling and getting the customer base there. And
Well, basically, it was mostly game. I was a game analyst, so I did market research. I looked at games that the company would like to sign for publishing, and the company was Innova Systems, specialized in online games like MMORPGs. Mostly Korean. If you guys heard of games like Lineage, Aeon, those types of games.
Aeon, yes.
Yeah, we also worked with SOE, Sony Online Entertainment, for PlanetSide 2, and a couple of other studios worldwide. So it was a great experience. Learned a lot and quickly understood, like, okay, that's how the business side of things works. This is why you would research the market before diving straight in, which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But surprisingly, not a lot of indie devs do it. To this day, I'd say 80% of indie devs that we talk to at HeroCraft, they're just not aware of like how to do market analysis. Why is it even important? Why would you benefit from it? Just stuff like that. So I'm glad that I learned that fairly early on.
But it seems like a really simple question. It's sort of like, how can you market your game if you don't know who you're marketing to?
Yeah, exactly. And like we'll probably talk about it later as well, but we go deeper. Like before you even start creating a game, or let's say you're at a prototype stage, how do you know that you're going in the right direction? Okay, you can do playtests, sure. You can give your game to your mates, right? Yeah, play this, watch your mate play it, analyze how it interacts with it. But this is just your friend. This may not even be your typical audience that you'll be ideally, targeting, right? So this is the kind of stuff that we do at HeroCraft to sort of help both indie developers as well as lower the risks both for us as the publisher and the developers. So yeah, kind of glad that it went that way for me in my career.
Do you want to set the next one, Ed?
One of the most interesting games you worked on was Starfall Tactics. Greenlit on Steam, yet failed to reach its target. What lessons did you learn from the failed Kickstarter?
I guess the main takeaway would be preparation is key, and sort of double the time that you think you would need to prepare. Like when Starfall launched, right? It wasn't the golden days of Kickstarter because Kickstarter's been around for a couple of years, and we read articles. I read articles. I looked at postmortems, like how did other people handle their Kickstarter campaigns, and I thought, okay, we set aside 3 months, and that's going to be enough. We'll get our materials ready, our assets ready. We'll get the tiers, the pledges. We'll gain the following, and we did mostly prepare everything. But the key thing was that wasn't enough time to actually gain a critical mass of fans and audience to follow us before the Kickstarter launched. And that meant in the first initial days that are vital for any Kickstarter campaign, we didn't have that critical mass of sort of pledges. And after that, it went downhill. So I thought I was being smart. Like I read all the other sort of both failed Kickstarter cases and successful Kickstarter cases. Mm-hmm. And back then, the main idea was, guys, set aside 3 months, just make sure that you focus on that Kickstarter, and that increases your chances of success, which it did, still wasn't enough. And that's the main takeaway. Preparation is key. Even if you think that you'll do it in a month, double the time just in case. Especially Kickstarter is usually a one-off, but you usually don't do like 5 to 10 Kickstarters for a single game. So you might as well do your best and take as much time as you need preparing for it.
Even though it failed on Kickstarter, it still launched as a game, though, didn't it?
Yeah.
Did you get donations through PayPal as well to finish the game off?
Well, kind of, because the situation there was, which seems to be a pattern in my career, which again we'll probably talk about. There was an IT company, it still is, that wanted to diversify their funds, and they held an internal debate, brainstorm of ideas. Different teams popped up with different business ideas, and one of those teams was a group of guys, just two guys initially. They wanted to do a game, and this was a totally new direction for the company. But they've argued their case well, and the company decided to provide funds for it. So those funds, the company looked at Kickstarter as a way to both measure the level of interest and maybe sort of decrease the cost of development a bit. But they were still okay with carrying the rest of the costs for the game's development. It was a fairly small team. This isn't a AAA product, but props to the company. They carried the project all the way to the finish line.
And yeah, I went to go try play it today, and I downloaded the game, but couldn't sign up because it was all in Russian. I couldn't find out how to turn it into English. But I was quite interested. In January 2020, I think it became a non-commercial project because the studio's disbanded, but the game's still live. Were you involved in that at all, or did you left before that decision was made?
No, I've left 2 years prior to that decision being made, and after parting ways with the team, no, I've helped out with a couple of issues here and there that popped up, but I've mainly stayed outside of the project. I still talk to a few members of the team to this day, and from what I can gather is basically they did a lot of testing. As you can sort of see on the game's website, they ran a lot of tests, a lot of alphas, a lot of betas. They run a lot of marketing campaigns, and the numbers just didn't add up. And you have to keep in mind that Starfall was always made as a free-to-play game, and designed as such. And by free-to-play, we don't mean like pay-to-win, like all these practices. Just a free-to-play game, kind of think League, etc. Right. So it wasn't. You couldn't just sort of slap a price tag on it and call it done. Right? If you were to make it a premium game, a buy-to-play game, there would still be a lot of work of redesigning it. So from what I can gather is that they just decided, or the company's management decided that it's not going to be worth it. So they just basically, instead of abandoning all of that work, they put it up as a non-commercial project, which again, props to the company. I'd say most companies that would just shut the game down, right? Good luck finding it afterwards. But at least the game is supported as is, and you can still check it out and play it. And I think the concept is still kind of fun and interesting to this day.
Is that a case of it being more of a passion project than a business project from the developers?
I'd say no, Badger. It was a definitely passion project for the developers, but for the company, it was purely a business initiative, right? So yeah, I guess the company supported the team as long as it could, as long as the management decided it was worth it. But even after it didn't work out, they didn't part in any sort of bad manner, and they parted on good terms.
Yeah, parted on good terms.
Yeah.
So, a quick question then: what do you think of loot boxes?
Depends. Let me give you an example. Starfall contained, well, instead of loot boxes, you know how Hearthstone has like decks, right? And players sort of get these booster packs. That's what Starfall had in. So basically, in Starfall, you would every player could arrange their spaceship fleet, and every spaceship is built out of several modules. And these modules, the parts for these modules, could be gained from these booster packs, right? So you didn't buy power directly. You couldn't just straight up, pay $5, and get a better ship. No, just like in Hearthstone, you could get cards which will give you parts to craft your modules for your ship. Right, and I think that's a more sort of fair way of doing it, rather than just making it keep playing, keep paying us in order to gain a better sort of power level over other players. Still, to be honest, I'm not a big fan of booster packs in general, simply because myself personally, I prefer to play single player games or buy to play multiplayer games rather than sort of dealing with free to play and all of its like associated mechanics.
Yeah, Whereas it does seem to be like free to play seems brilliant at first, but then you soon realise that actually I'll spend 400-500 quid on this game that I could have bought for 60 quid normally.
Yeah. On the other hand, let's say like the League of Legends model is, I think, fairly fair, right? You don't buy power, you just gain variety. Basically, each champion in League is just a resource, a tool that you can use. You don't have to use it. It's perfectly fine because you have plenty of alternatives for each champion as a tool, right? As a class that they take on. But yeah, different models. Like I have no issue with the League of Legends, let's say, business model. It's fine. It's more or less fair.
It's worked for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't really knock a model that works.
Again, the Dota 2 model is also cool, right? But then again, keep in mind, not every indie developers are not Valve, right? Valve has the resources to sort of pump in content into the game before they get anything out of it, right? So not every indie developer could afford that kind of business model.
You go to the next one, Ed?
I'm just dealing with a few things behind the scenes, so if you wouldn't mind taking it, then I can catch up where I am. I do apologise.
No worries. So, now, moving on from Starfall, you went to go work on a game called Life Race, which was another free-to-play game. I'm looking at the trailer, it looked beautiful.
Thank you.
But I can't seem to find it anywhere online. Did it ever release at all?
It had a public release, but again, let's get a little bit into it because before that, in my career, I've only read about stories like about games stuck in development hell.
Mm-hmm.
And this time, I actually got to participate in one.
First one's like you're really happy, like I got a game that was in development hell. It's brilliant.
This was by choice because back then it wasn't funny. It is. I can laugh at it now, right? Back then it wasn't funny. Just like any exhaustive, crazy experience. So. What got me interested in working on Life Race in the first place is that challenge of taking a very troubled project, getting it into shape, and making it to the finish line, which I almost did if it wasn't for one factor, which we'll talk about. So the basic story behind Life Race, which is again, seems to be a pattern, a company that were just a couple of business investors, friends that owned a common sort of business venture, they decided to diversify their business. And one of them suggested, hey, let's do an online game. We know nothing about it. We've never worked with games before. Let's just do it.
Call of Duty made 400 million last year. Let's have a bit of that pie.
That's the kind of thinking they had.
Yeah.
Which again, if you're not part of the industry, fair enough. I can understand why they thought it's going to be easy. So they hired a bunch of people from the games industry. And over time, the team grew to over 25 people. A year and a half passed. There was no game. Like there was no version of a game built that they could sort of play around and see this progress being made. Mostly promises. The only prototypes were made in the initial stages of development, using assets from different games to sort of showcase the investors what the final game would approximately, look like.
Mm-hmm.
So. The team sort of started. There was internal conflict within the team as well, and the investors thought, okay, so do we shut this game down? Do we give it another go with another project lead, with another team lead? They decided to give it another shot with me at the helm, and the first 6 to 8 months have been quite intense because not only I had to sort of try to put a game together using the different sort of stuff that each sort of member of the team has been working on, I also had to calm down the team emotionally because there has been internal strife going on, sort of people blame each other for the delays, for broken promises. The classical argument was, like the developers versus the artists, right? Yeah. That's kind of what happened there. So I had to sort of calm people down, make sure they feel secure, because before I came on, people started leaving the team because they did not see any future.
This is a broken team, yeah, there's no vision left.
Yeah. So the first 6 to 8 months was like, it was healing and it was putting things together. But after 8 to 10 months of working, we had a playable version. It worked, everything was working. We ran multiplayer matches internally, and we launched a public alpha, which was fairly successful. And by successful, I mean, we invited, so external players could sign up for the game, and there was interest. We invited people in, and we had just like any free-to-play game, it is vital that you track your game's performance, right? So the statistics the analytical system gave us showed us that, okay, this wasn't a major hit that the investors hoped for, but it was still a title, a game that could perform well and could make a decent return on the investment.
It's not making £1 million overnight, but it could make £1 million over 10 years.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, and we were quite transparent. I showed the numbers to the investors, and I told them, "Here's the story. Here's what the numbers are. If you guys want to go further, we'll go further. I'm ready to take it further." Alpha One, they gave us the go-ahead. We started working on the game, and we were aiming for a beta version, a more stable version with more content, just more progression systems, stuff to unlock a tournament system, which that was one of the main ideas that the investors had. They wanted people to be able to bet real money on the outcome of the matches.
Oh, so this is kind of like esports before esports.
Kind of, yeah. And to be honest, like if real money is involved, there's more like on the line, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have had that in England, like the era of internet cafes. Did you guys have that before, like personal computers were the rage?
Slightly, we had a little bit, but not that big.
Okay. Well, I had that tip of that in Russia as well. When I was in high school in Moscow, people would go to these like internet cafes where they had the latest games, they had powerful computers that could run them, and as high schoolers, we would bet money, right?
Yeah.
So I would say, guys, like 3 of you, I'll beat your ass in Quake Arena, like for let's say a quid, and we would all like put money in. So that's the kind of stuff that.
Yeah, I've kind of done that on my own. So I have my mates round playing Gran Turismo, and loser has to buy pizza.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm just looking at the chat here. Mr. Kittimer, who is the developer for Hyperparasite, and someone who I think is looking for a publisher for his next game. Just hint, hint. He just said he now needs to play all these games. Can you drop links, please?
Chloe's on the lookout for him now.
I don't think Life Racer is available anymore.
There's a trailer. I think you found it on my LinkedIn profile, right?
Yeah, I found the trailer on your LinkedIn profile. Starfall's available, but I couldn't find a way to get it out of Russian, so I couldn't create an account and play it.
Oh, well, initially we had both English and Russian, and at some point, that's after I left, the team decided to just focus on the Russian player base first because they wanted to keep just testing stuff. And I don't think they ever got to the point.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, don't worry. Yeah, and I think Starfall is also available on Steam. Correct me if I'm wrong, Badger. Have you looked for it on Steam?
No, I looked for it today and I found it because I went through the web. The website's still live.
Yeah. Try searching for it on Steam as well.
What I looked for it on Steam, but yeah, I searched for it today and I found through the website and it gave me the download for the client. And then when I installed it, it was just all in Russian. I'm a Yorkshireman. I'm an idiot. I don't speak any other language.
But if you look at the videos and the streams of it, they had English in. So maybe it's like hidden somewhere in the settings menu.
Yeah, I'll try to press the settings, but it came up with Russian again. I don't know.
Okay, if you're
I'll find more questions.
Take me later, yeah, and I'll ask the team if there's a way to enable English in the game client. Maybe there is.
Really impressive. It was an ambitious game, wasn't it? Like a massive MMO with enclosed galaxies and pirate factions in each one. And
Badger, have you played Battlefield Gothic Armada? Which is
yes.
Yeah, so that's what we were aiming for, but in like a galaxy that is persistent, kind of like EVE Online. But was the combat of Battlefield Gothic Armada, which is a cool game. I really liked it.
Yeah, Armada. I mean, I did get a sense looking at the pictures and the Kickstarter and stuff like that and the trailer. It did look a lot like EVE Online.
Yeah, that's one of the inspirations as well. We wanted a really persistent universe with player-influenced economy and like players. Just the galaxy was supposed to be a sandbox for players to sort of interact with and influence. That was one of the main design pillars for Starfall, at least back when I was heading up the team.
And since we just mentioned there that Kittimer, I believe he's looking for because Hyperparasite, he's the developer of Hyperparasite. That's my indie game of the year so far.
I've listened to the podcast with Hyperparasite. Yeah.
I think he's looking for a publisher for his next game. So our next question was, you're now head of PC games publishing at HeroCraft. what do you look for in an indie game that makes you decide to publish it?
Okay.
And that's a big question. That's
It is my
it's not a
favorite
question, that's a
question.
discussion, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief because there are a couple of things that I think most indie developers will actually benefit from, regardless of whether you want to sign with a publisher or not, right? And to be honest, guys, I've given this advice over and over, hundreds, if not thousands, of developers over the years. And it pains me to this day that 90% of developers that we talk to don't know just how to think about it. Let me go ahead and just dive into it. So at HeroCraft, before let's say you pitch us a game and we look at it, looks interesting, the idea is interesting. And first, what we do, the first step is we analyze the niche that the game is targeting at. Let's say Badger'Ed, you guys are working on a Metroidvania game, right? In that genre. Bring us that game, and you tell us, guys, Dead Cells sold 1 million copies. I think our game, which is kind of similar, is going to do the same. So we look at the niche. In this case, we would look at all of the games that released in the Metroidvania genre within the last 5 years on Steam, for example. We will look at the median sales. We will look at the year-on-year sales, and we'll look at both overall trends. Are the sales going up? Are they going down? As well as for each particular year, like what kind of games released, which one of them got big, why.
So right? You kind of say it's similar to using Fortnite as an example. Fortnite blew up and went massive. Suddenly everybody's adding a battle royale element to their games, and the battle royale trend's dropping off now.
And I've seen that trend pop up over and over again, both with MOBA games, World of Warcraft type of games, right? Yeah. What most, even big companies, don't really, or maybe they do understand, but they risk it anyway because they have the funds. And I've seen so many sort of games shut down because of this. Let's say a game gets big, which nobody can predict, by the way, right? We're not fortune tellers, we're not prophets. If anybody's telling you they can guarantee a game is successful, they're probably lying.
Yeah.
Right? So let's say a level of success, like Fortnite's level of success, nobody can predict. Dota's level of success, nobody can predict. It just happens, right? The zeitgeist is there. Yeah. So what usually happens is it gets big, the game gets big, and a lot of these companies, both indie developers, larger publishers, they want a piece of that pie. They all rush in, right? What they usually happens is maybe the first 2-3 titles that manage to differentiate themselves gain that piece of the pie. Let's say about 70 to 80% of the pie. And the rest of these, let's say tens, if not hundreds of games in that genre have to fight each other to death for the last 10%. Let's say in the MOBA space, we have what? We have Dota 2, we have League of Legends, we have Smite, if you guys have heard of it, from Iris.
I used to play Smite a lot. That's the game I played at a pro level, actually.
Wow.
There you go. Yeah.
I mean, I play League, but that is definitely not on stream.
We have what? Heroes of the Storm, but the only reason that game gained any level of traction is because of Blizzard's IP, not because of its design, to say, right? The strength of the IP is there. And let's say out of client-based PC games, these are probably the only successful MOBAs that I've heard of, outside of, let's say, Asia, right? Outside of games aimed at China, specifically. And you had a ton of other MOBA games just die off, right? That same thing happened to World of Warcraft prior to that, with all of these WoW clones just dying off. No matter how big they were. Remember Warhammer Online? That was a thing, died off, right? A ton of these games just died off. So if you have the funds, or if you're lucky enough to be one of the first games to sort of rush into a new emerging market, you do have a chance to gain a piece of that pie. But once there's an article on Forbes about how a genre is successful, you're 2 years behind. It's too late. Don't get into that.
With indie games, I always look for the hook.
There you go, Badger.
If you want to see what indie games, if you want to see what AAA games are going to do in 2-3 years' time, look at what indie games are doing today.
Thank you. And you've just mentioned one thing that's going to bring us back to the original question, which I've sidetracked. Oh, sorry. So
no problem.
It's fine.
Yeah. So let's reanalyze the niche, right? And to give you any solid numbers, your typical Metroidvania game in 2019 sold about 3,000 copies in its first year of release, right? Yeah. And again, 3,000 copies may be okay. doesn't seem like a lot, to be honest.
It depends on the development cost. It has to be really low.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
still, let's say 3,000 copies, I'd rather increase the chances of the game getting even bigger simply by aiming it at a different niche or positioning it differently, right? So, and when we look at sales data, we look at median sales, not average. And I don't know, Badger, you might probably don't know about it, but again, you're a bit closer to game development, I think, guys, with a few brushes to game development. Median sales are basically, a median is, what is a median? The most common sample in a data set, right? So our goal is to find the most typical scenario that an indie dev releasing a game in this particular niche will face in a particular year, right? So when I say 3,000 copies sold in its first year of release, sure, there are games that sold way more than that,
And there's games that sold way less, which brings the median
so
to
we're looking at,
3,000.
again, our goal is to look at the most common, the most typical, realistic scenario that an indie developer will face. So let's say I tell you this information, guys, 3,000 copies in your first year, and what we usually get from indie developers is, well, that cell sold 1,000,000. How come? My answer to that is nobody can predict or guarantee that level of success that Dead Cells did, and it's a great game. Moreover, if you look at the story behind the developers of Dead Cells, it wasn't an overnight success. They took years to make a game like Dead Cells to reach that level of success. Years of failed projects, of struggling, just to have a shot of getting that level of
This
success.
is exactly what Adam said, who was on the other week, the developer of FortressCraft. He was saying he made FortressCraft and he made, I think he grossed £3.7 million on that, $3.7 million on that game. And I'm going, wow, how's it feel to have an overnight success like FortressCraft? He went, I've had 10 years of failures.
Yeah, that's
unfortunately,
exactly true.
he had the same group of people who invested in his games, and one dropped out before FortressCraft, like they lost faith in him. And then FortressCraft hit it big.
There you go. Yeah, but to be honest, it could take 20 years.
Yeah.
Right? This is a long game. So you've mentioned the hook, right? So this is our next step. If we're happy, if we see potential both in the game and the niche that it's targeting, and the niche is just a fancy word for a subgenre, right? So let's say the example I usually give is we take the RPG genre, which is fairly all-encompassing, right? You have your action RPGs, CRPGs, JRPGs, a variety of other types of RPGs.
Yeah.
And if you're a fan of action RPGs, you may not necessarily even like JRPGs. You may hate them, right? So these are different fans of a very particular experience.
One of the reasons I did buy the Final Fantasy VII remake is because I love Final Fantasy VII, but it's an action RPG and I prefer turn-based RPG.
Yeah, so different expectations.
So even though I'm a Final Fantasy VII fan, and in every metric I fall into what you're doing as a publisher to market to me, that one bit stopped me from buying it.
There you go. So our goal is to really narrow down as much as possible for a very particular niche that the game is targeting. Why? Because it simply makes our marketing activities that much more effective, right? We don't waste our time and attention and marketing money just sort of trying to bring in people who may not necessarily be engaged in the first place, right? Yeah. So in this case, trying to sell you Final Fantasy VII, the remake, would be a bad idea. You'd be better off buying an indie game that's inspired by the classical Final Fantasy VII, right? So again, we narrow down the niche, and then we start looking at how can we differentiate the game that we plan to publish from tens, if not hundreds of games that released years prior that are going to release this year and over the next 2 years, right? So what is the hook, as you've mentioned? And a hook, to summarize, a hook is a micro innovation that brings something fresh to the genre. It can be summarized in 1 or 2 sentences, and you can easily showcase it in a GIF or GIF or a trailer, like a 5-second trailer, GIF, whatever, and people would immediately get it. Like, what's cool about it? So a good example of go ahead.
I'm going to sound like I'm plugging Kittimer's gaming. I've just said like indie devs are 3 years before AAA. He's saying they're probably like games are 30 years ahead with AAA.
Yeah.
But their new game they're working on, the thing that got me straight away with the hook for that was you're a blind cyberpunk samurai. Right? But you're fighting enemies as you go along like a side's going to be. But you can't see all the enemies because you're blind. So some enemies you can only detect with sound, some you can only detect with smell, some you can only detect with like the wind moving. So like that's to me that blew my mind that I've never seen anything like this in a game where it's your senses can bring up one enemy, but you might miss another one because you're not smelling, you're listening. And even though I've not played the game, I've only seen little clips of it and stuff. But yeah, to me, that was the hook that got me like, no one's done this.
Yeah, there you go, right? And that is exactly our goal when we try to position the game on the market so that both its fans, like the potential audience of a particular, very particular niche, notices it. And so that it has a chance to actually spill over to other niches and gain that level of success that you can only dream of, like the big indie hits. But again, keep in mind, our job is simply to increase the chances of that happening. Nobody can guarantee it. The only thing that we can control is our actions and our level of preparedness, right? But that is still enough to gain an advantage over a lot of the other titles on the market. So when we're looking at the hook, let's say you bring us that Metroidvania. So we'll try to look at what you guys are doing. So what are your plans for the game? What is your overall vision? And is there something that fits the criteria that I've already mentioned?
Mm-hmm.
So for Badger has already given a great example of a hook. My favorite example is probably Super Hot. You guys, I'm sure you've heard of it, right?
Yeah.
So again, if you take Super Hot, it's a fairly standard, very typical, like a tactical FPS experience, with one key difference, which I'm sure you already know. What is it?
Rob, I know of Super Hot, but I've never played it.
Oh God. Okay, Ed, you?
Not a clue.
Okay. Okay. The game only sold millions of copies, came from a small indie development team, but all right, I'll give you that. So the thing is, time moves only when you move in Super Hot.
Yes,
Super Hot.
There you go.
Sorry. I've just played John Wick Hex.
Uh-huh.
And that reminded me of Super Hot, where time moves when you move, but the enemies move also. And
Yeah.
I've played Super Hot as well. I feel like an idiot.
There you go, guys. That is a perfect example of a hook, right? Because it's a micro innovation, and the word micro is also important because, like, for any title, I can probably come up with like 50 hooks. Doesn't matter because you have to be realistic. You have to pick a hook that the team is capable of doing and is interested in actually doing, right? Because it shouldn't be your game. It's the developer's game. So they should be the ones that most passionate about getting that hook in the right place. So for Super Hot, the guys behind it were smart enough because it's a micro innovation that allowed a development team of 2 core members, with some outsourcing help, of course, but 2 core members to get a game out, get a game to the finish line, and give it a chance to stand out, which is exactly what it did, right? And it does bring something fresh to the genre, to the tactical FPS genre. Why? Because this one mechanic allows you to look at aspects of the FPS genre that you'd usually take for granted even more closely or at a different angle. For example, suddenly positioning becomes way more important. Projectile direction and speed becomes way more important than in any other FPS game that you've played. And that is just the best example of a hook. And rivaled only, let's say, by Braid. Have you guys heard of Braid from Jonathan Blow?
Yes.
So again, if you Braid is a platformer with time manipulation mechanics. If you take these time manipulation mechanics out of Braid is just a run-of-the-mill platformer game. It's just very standard. It has a cool, quick art style, but that's it. Mechanics-wise, it's just run-of-the-mill game.
But then since Braid, we've seen a lot of time manipulation mechanics in games.
Yeah.
So it's that micro innovation that's gone on to be repeated.
Yeah, Braid was the one that made it big, right? Mm-hmm. Because these time manipulation mechanics allow you to look at the typical elements of a platformer game that you take for granted at a different angle, right? It's cool, and it wasn't a gimmick. And keep in mind, a hook should not be a gimmick. A hook only becomes a hook when it provides, again, a fresh experience, and it adds depth to the games, to the typical experience that the game of this genre provides. And this is exactly what Jonathan Blow did with Braid. If you've noticed, like the time manipulation puzzles that start off at the start of the game, they don't stay at that level. They get deeper, they get more interesting. They just get more meaningful. And by the end of the game, the type of puzzles and the level of complexity that they bring is drastically different to the initial stages of the game. And that is another great example of a hook. So this is what we try to do. We look at the niche, we analyze the niche, we look if the numbers make sense for us to get involved, and if they will have a chance of getting a nice return for both us and the developers. And then we try to look, okay, what is the game's hook? How do we position it? How do we make it stand out among all the other games that have come out from bigger teams, more famous teams, bigger IPs? and all the exciting games that are just going to come out as well. So that's
Do you try set a game aside from its subgenre? Like, even though you're marketing to a subgenre, do you try to set it aside as its own thing, or would you? I don't know how to phrase. So let me say something you see quite a lot, like something like an indie game described as Zelda-esque.
To be honest, that's a bit too vague for me. I don't.
Yeah, is that something you try to avoid? Like, like kind of like Binding of Isaac style game. Like, well, do you want to? Because I always think if you have to invoke another game, I could just go buy that one.
It depends. Let's say if you're targeting fans of specifically like the Binding of Isaac, maybe it makes sense in some of your marketing sort of materials to mention that game as one of your inspirations, right? But again, it does have the chance of sort of being overshadowed by the bigger game unless you have a hook. Right. Yeah. And we actually do have an example of that with one of our titles that we recently announced, which is Gravewood High. And Gravewood High is a stealth horror game that takes place in a high school. You play as one of the students of this high school. You wake up from a nightmare in the middle of class, and the room is empty. You look outside, the school has turned into a deadly labyrinth, and the school, the only opponent, the only living creature is a mad teacher that is chasing you, trying to catch you. And with this particular game, we knew exactly the kind of audience that we are looking for, and that would be Hello Neighbor fans, if you guys have heard of that game.
Yes,
right?
Played it.
So it was an experiment on our behalf. And as we told the developers, guys, this is a marketing experiment. If this type of positioning doesn't work out, as in it's just like Hello Neighbor, but, and here comes the hook, it's probably the most replayable stealth horror game that you're going to play in a while because of random level generation and destructible environments. Can you name me a horror game that has destructible environments? Just off the top of your head?
No.
Neither can I. In terms of random level generation, I can probably name Monstrum, which is a game that came about 3-4 years ago from a very talented team, but they didn't have destructible environments. Why? Because typically in a horror game, a lot rides on the atmosphere, and giving players the power to destroy environments may ruin the atmosphere unless you're being smart about it.
Yeah, but, and I also think like the horror game kind of tends to funnel you down a certain route.
Yeah.
So if you can just destroy a wall and bugger off a different way, you kind of lose the rails.
Here's the gist. We position it as a stealth horror game, but in reality the game is a mixture of like a puzzle action game and an immersive sim, kind of like, I don't really want to invoke I'll say it, it's kind of like System Shock in a way. But it's in high school, but we don't position it as such because we're not targeting fans of System Shock, and we don't want to disappoint them, because if you tell them, guys, this is just like System Shock, but in a high school, it may sound cool, might not always be true. So
then you're gonna get bombarded with negative Steam
reviews and a higher refund percentage. So you don't want to do it. Your hook, your positioning should not be a gimmick. It should be an honest representation of your game, right? And it should really bring something to the genre that you're targeting, so that fans can actually get behind it and you can get them interested. So what we instead did was said it's just like Hello Neighbor, but it has that awesome level of replayability, and it's set in high school, which is, again, considering the younger age of the Hello Neighbors audience, was the perfect fit. And it worked out. I think in Feb, we've announced the game and run a public alpha, and the response has been just awesome, both from like YouTubers and streamers who streamed Hello Neighbor and talked about it, as well as players who love the original game. Yeah, that's just one example of what we do in terms of positioning. And if that type of positioning didn't work out at level like stage 1, we already had plans B for stage 2 and stage 3 in terms of our marketing plan. We already knew, okay, so what's our plan B? How do we talk about the game differently? And in reality, these are the type of marketing tests that we constantly run at HeroCraft. Okay, so this is a particular niche that we're targeting. What is the best way to talk to them? What type of materials really attract them? How do we talk about the game? How do we talk about the game's hook? Do we present it well enough? If not, how can we do it better? And this is it's a very iterative, long process. Usually takes us about 6 to 8 months. That's why we don't take on games that are just 3 months away from launch, for example. Although we do have a lot of developers messaging us, unfortunately, even us liking the game, we have to say no.
You don't have time to put proper campaign together.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's not going to be worthwhile for the developers. Like, we're not going to do the best that we can for the game. So why the hell would they sign with us? Why bother?
So when is the best time for a developer to approach you with a pitch then?
8 to 10 months before launch. Like, as soon as you have like your alpha build prototype ready, send us the game.
Right. And how do they send you it? Is it HeroCraft online? Just find the website and.
Yeah, either the website. We do have like an email that you can reach us. You guys can also put out for this podcast. You can put out my email. Go ahead. If you don't have it, we'll provide it for you. So you can just reach me directly.
But if there's anybody in the chat that wants to reach out to HeroCraft or anything, send me a message, and I can ping across an email. I'm sure I've got the email for Layla, so I'm sure I can ping it across to there, and it'll.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Right, let's get to the next question, because that went on a lot longer than I was expecting it to.
I knew that was going to be a big question.
I knew it was a big question.
Fucking amazing answer. Thank you.
Thank you. So the main reason you are here tonight is to talk about Revival Recolonization. Yes, nailed it. So can you tell us a little bit about the game, please?
Yeah, first off, I'll start out. Why the hell do we have such a weird name? Okay, so one other aspect so that might help you or the developers listening to this in terms of marketing. Guys, always try to pick a name that does not compete in terms of like Google searches, Steam searches, keyword searches with other games, all right, or even big franchises. For Gravewood High, if you search for Gravewood High on Steam, this is going to be the only game that pops up. Mm-hmm. Unlike, let's say, if you know how like on Steam you type in like the first half of a game's title and you just get a list of titles that pops up, right? That's your competition. You don't want that, right? So we picked specifically Gravewood High because there wasn't a lot of competition for this particular name. If you search for it on Google, on YouTube, on Steam, or any other platform, Gravewood High, like our game, is going to be the first title that pops up on the first sort of searches that you see. With the Revival, we had to make an exception because the Revival series, as you guys may know or not know, is a very old series. It started off in 2004 with a game that released on push-button phones, right? It ran on Java.
Yeah.
And so it kind of felt as a bit of a disservice if we just renamed the game completely. So I had to keep the original Revival in and sort of add recolonization to tie it back to the game's new theme, as in you recolonize Earth and sort of try to make things better. And as to your question, Ed, which again, sorry for sidetracking a bit.
That's fine.
Don't apologise. We're loving this. It's fantastic.
Okay, so
sidetracking is great because it gives more of an insight to all the viewers, and for myself and Badger. So
there you go. So Revival is a 4X strategy game in the vein of Civilization with a few key differences. Again, here comes the hook. And whether it's effective enough or not, time will tell, right? So it takes place on Earth after a devastating cataclysm that almost destroyed all of humanity and sort of drastically transformed the planet and the landscape. And it's a game world that really reacts to player actions and sort of provides a level of player freedom that, in my opinion, the genre hasn't seen since the days of Alpha Centauri, which launched 20 years ago. I think 21 years ago.
Looking at the trailer, I don't know if I might be wrong here because also I've not played the game, but just looking at the trailer, it instantly reminded me of sort of like Civilization meets Populous.
I could play the trailer for you if you'd like.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want me to play the trailer?
Play the trailer. Let's play the trailer.
We can still talk over it. I've lowered the level of it, so we can still talk over.
Yeah. Yes, it reminded me of Civilization meets Populous immediately.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Populous. Well,
Sorry, my age there.
Nah, it's okay. So you don't really get to play like God. Well, maybe you do in terms of one other differentiating feature of Revival that sort of was there from day one since Revival 1 in 2004 is that the player has an actual avatar in the game world called the Emissary, which is kind of like a hero unit, let's say from World of Warcraft. Sorry, not World of Warcraft. Warcraft 3.
Yeah.
Both of us showing our age here.
Yeah, we're showing our age now.
Yeah.
Don't be the cool kids, but we're fairly.
Yeah. So,
thanks for the chance to stay okay, boomer.
There we go. And so with Revival, so besides the Emissary, we also have our own version of Skynet, right, in the world of revival. So the basic gist of the story is humanity created an AI called the All Mind, which at some point, as AIs do, thought that it's probably the most beautiful being on Earth, and humanity is just not worth it. They started to destroy everyone, and so tried to wipe the galaxy. So a team of researchers, an international group of researchers working on the AI project, find out what was happening, and they sort of disabled the AI by cutting off its neuron links that were based on different planets' lithospheres, and I hope I'm saying that right. It was just like a galaxy-wide expansive neural network that this team of scientists tried to switch off. And in the result of the process, the AI went nuts. It went mad. And they forgot all of history. Some of them even worshipped the All Mind as like a higher being, a god, so to speak. And the All Mind went into a slumber. It's kind of went nuts and it went into a slumber, but it will react to players' actions. Let's say if you try terraforming the planet, if you try performing certain actions in game, there's the AI reacts differently, right?
So and because you're terraforming the planet, but the planet's trying to fight back.
Yeah, and that's the Alpha Centauri inspiration as well. Yeah. Remember, they had the planet Chiron, I think it was called, something like that, that also reacted to player intervention. But we have the similest thing happening in Revival, and the range of influence can be like it can spawn increased radiation of a particular, region, which would in turn lead to chances of the high chances of sort of units getting radiated and turning into flesh-eating zombies, for example. Mm-hmm. And we tried making these edicts, as we call them, the All Mind edicts, kind of like laws set for a particular region of the game map. We tried not making them sort of distinctly bad or good, but rather, depending on the strategy chosen by the player during a match, you may either like it, like love it, like, yeah, this is exactly what I need, like a worldwide drought, and I'm the only one who has access to like water resources, for example. Yeah. Or you might hate it and try to actively struggle against it. And that's, again, one other sort of the second part of the hook that we think audiences will like, fans of 4X strategies will engage with.
Do you want to take the next one, Ed?
Yeah, so... oh, hello.
10.
Yeah, no, my PC's going funny. 1 second.
What was his history Revival? How does it get about?
Kind of a funny story, and again, a pattern in my career. So, in terms of inspiration, we do, like, the members of the Revival team will play a variety of games. But if I were to narrow it down to, like, a few core titles, it would be Alpha Centauri, obviously, Endless Legend, as an example of a game that was relatively recent. I think it came out in 2014, a newcomer from Amplitude Studios. They did an amazing job. And that game has a following to this day, and again, I'm personally a fan of Endless Legend. And Civilization, obviously, and Age of Wonders Planetfall, as an example of a recent successful title in the genre. I love the combat in that game. Oh, and King of Dragon Pass, which is a game, an awesome text-based RPG management game that HeroCraft helped port to iOS and Android at some point at the company's history. Yeah. So as to how it came about, it's a bit of a dramatic story because after Revival 2, which was a very successful sort of game for the company, the original sort of the author of the first Revival games, Vladislav Mishakov, and his best friend since high school, Vladimir Pinko, they worked on other games for a bit, and for the last 5 years, they tried to make a sequel, the third entry in the series. Mm-hmm. 5 years they've been trying to get this thing off the ground, and for one reason or another, it just didn't work out. For a variety of reasons, like at some point they didn't have enough people, at some point they didn't have enough clarity with the game's vision, just whatever. And in 2016, there was a third reboot of this third entry in the series. They started working on the game. They worked on it for about 1.5 years, and they showcased it internally, as we do at HeroCraft. And I took a look at that prototype, and I immediately had concerns because back then, despite having a few like cool ideas, like they had for each map they had this set of rules that would change from map to map. For example, one map would be infested by zombies, another map disabled ranged weapons, so you just had to play with close range weapons all the time. And it did sort of motivate and push players to get out of their comfort zones and try out different strategies. But besides that feature, it was a bit of a sort of bare bones clone of Civ.
There was nothing really there to pull you in.
Yeah, they didn't really have that hook.
Yeah.
That with just the importance of which I hope is clear by at this point. Right? So I voiced these concerns, and I wasn't the only one at HeroCraft and HeroCraft's management that shared these concerns. And the Revel team had a few internal discussions, and at some point, I was offered the opportunity to take the helm and sort of try to shape this into a product, into an engaging game. And again, which sounded fun, sounded like an interesting challenge. It couldn't be worse than Life Race, I thought, because in terms of like the emotional.
I see a running theme in your career where you like a challenge.
I do, but also it kind of pains me to see like developers just spending years of their life and not seeing like the end result, right? Not seeing the the way to the finish line, right?
Yeah.
And again, I speak to a variety of game developers. To this day, like last year, I think I spoke to a game developer from Alaska who, for 13 years, has been developing a game in the tower defense genre. At some point he did it. He worked on it with his brothers, and then he started working on it alone. 13 years of his life. Do you know how much a typical tower defense game sells in its first year of release?
Go on.
Less than 2,000 copies.
Oh.
Ouch.
Yeah. And again, this is a passion project for that developer, but he had big plans of sort of, getting into game dev, maybe opening a studio, creating other games. And when we talked, I was honest, was this a game of feedback, provided the numbers, we discussed maybe ways he could sort of try to position the game differently, try to make it stand out a bit more. But the thing that really struck me was that like the developer wasn't as much upset about like that the game maybe didn't have that level of potential that he thought it did, but he was just so surprised that somebody has taken an interest in the game. Like that was the most flattering thing for that developer.
There's a game that instantly comes to mind. I'm not going to mention it because it's not been released yet, and I don't want to shitting on it. But the smaller expos I go to, there's a game I came across 7 years ago. They've been working on it for 7 years now, but they worked on it for 3 years. They worked on it for 2 years to get it to Expo to show it. Then I think they kind of stopped work on it, went and got jobs, saved up money, came back for 2 years, worked on it, stopped production, stopped development, went and got jobs, saved money, and now they keep adding more and more things to it. And it's like I interview them when I see them at expos. It's just like I want you guys to have a platform. You've worked so hard, and it goes to the point where I no longer think of them as developers, but as artists. Like, I don't think they cared about making their money back. They just need to get their product out there and go. Yeah. We made that.
Like on one hand, like that level of dedication is awesome, right? On the other hand, guys, come on, like if you want this to be a career, let's say, or something that you can dedicate the rest of your life to as like your main sort of job, like career, cause, whatever you want to call it, you have to be a bit smarter about it, right? And again, so a similar thing was happening to Revel. Can you imagine like 5 years trying to reboot this franchise, just wasn't getting anywhere, and then I come in, and then a few other guys at HeroCraft come in, they're like, okay guys, this isn't just working, so how can we improve it? So obviously the team, after these discussions, they were like, okay, what do we do? Tell us. If you're that smart, Pete, tell us what the hell do we do.
Tell us you fix this.
Yeah.
So Kit Emerge said to try to get the developer, the developer behind Parasite, Ms. Kit Emerge just said Doc Hogan could love you. Doc Hogan is the developer, he's a developer of Empire in Ruins.
Yeah.
You know Empire in Ruins?
Yeah.
Doc Hogan's the developer of that. Hammond and Ravens, I think their development studio's called. Kitty managed to say Doc Hogan could fall in love with you.
I'll take that as a
Doc needs somebody
compliment,
to just go, right, that's brilliant, but can we make this commercially viable now?
Yeah. So, like, first month or two, I just spent talking to the team, getting their vision for the game, playing the prototype, brainstorming ideas with the publishing team, no, our PC publishing team, and researching the market. Just sort of, on a daily basis, I read articles, listened to podcasts with like top designers in the Forex genre, like guys like Soren Johnson, John Schaefer, like sort of just try to immerse myself as much in the genre as possible. And again, the hook that I sort of came up with is, and again, it's not enough to just come up with any hook. Any monkey in a cage can come up with a variety of ideas.
Yeah.
You need to tie the ideas to the team's skills and their sort of their area of interest. So I looked at, okay, what's the most interesting thing about the prototype? It's the different rule sets for every map. Right? Okay, what if we were to allow players and the game to change the rule sets, but not like globally, but maybe for every region in the game within one single session, one single game session?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that was, based on our research, one of the most common problems in this genre to this day is boring mid to late game.
Yes.
So if you guys played, Civ or any other Forex strategy game, I'm sure you can relate. Like the first turn, let's 20, 30 turns, depending on
when you first set your cities in your roads, it's quite exciting.
Yeah, you're like, what's the best spot? Who my
Then you have
neighbors
a
are?
long time of boring management until you get to the end game.
Yeah, and to be honest, like let's say by 50 to 60 to 70% like of the session's length, you already know who your neighbors are. The game already tells you, okay, this faction is aiming for this type of victory. Here's how close they are. No, this faction is going for this victory. Here's how close they are. So you can almost predict with a decent chance of success which faction is going to win. So why bother? And most of these games, they don't provide you with enough tools to upset the balance. That sort of happens by that mid to end level point. So our goal is, go ahead.
Sorry, it's one of the things in Revival that, again, it's the hooks that caught my attention, was that the AI can change things on the map.
Yeah.
But then you can also lock the AI out from doing things on the map.
Yeah. We wanted to give you a variety of ways to protect yourself. So there shouldn't be just one go-to method, because that's boring. That lacks depth, right? So
like you said earlier, you constantly use ranged weapons, and you find out you've got a strategy with ranged weapons that works. Suddenly go on a map, ranged weapons don't work. But I need to come up with a new strategy now. I can't beat this game with a single method.
Yeah. And one other thing that we noticed is that like the edict system that the AI sort of spawns, we tied it to a progression system. So the first edicts, they only affect, let's say, a particular number of hexes on the map. Mm-hmm. The second edicts of the second level bits, they affect a larger area. Then you affect the whole region. And by the time you reach edicts, like the fourth level of edicts, they affect the map globally. And that is our way to both A, make each game session more unique and varied and interesting, and B, make sure it doesn't get too stale, and C, sort of try to sort of encourage players to change their tactics on the fly, right? And again, another aspect that we wanted to solve is most of a typical game session in a Forex strategy game can take several hours, right? Mm-hmm. And again, with Ed having a kid, let's say, Ed, do you have like 3 to 4 hours a day to play a game, like a single session of a game?
Not with a 1-year-old, you don't know.
Exactly, and neither do I. Right? So we wanted to make sure that we have a way to control the game session lengths. And let's say a typical session right now lasts...
Yeah, I do apologise. I'm muting myself in the stream.
Don't worry. Times like, Ed, do you want time to play 3 hours in a game? And then Ben chimes up.
Exactly.
I mean, personally, I do have the time, but for a normal person, no.
Yeah. So again, the edict system that we've introduced tries to kill 2 rabbits with 1 stone, right? So it both tries to bring a hook to the genre that is inspired by the classics like Alpha Centauri, and B, tries to solve some of these core issues as we see them, and again, based on the research that we've made, as seen by both, like, oh, hi!
I do apologise, my child wants to cuddle with me.
Mm-hmm. Hey, that's awesome.
Hey, got Ben for Ben fans.
There he is.
Hi, Ben.
Oh, you're going to do it yourself. Good boy.
Yeah, isn't it nighttime already, Ben?
It is. It's way past his bedtime and he's refusing to sleep, so I really do apologise. He had to come into the podcast.
Oh, we don't mind Ben.
Yeah.
You're cold, mister. That could be why he's so loud. He's cold.
Oh, don't worry though. I think I've read about it. Babies have much better, sort of the way they handle cold is way better than an adult does, right? The body temperature. For them, the more dangerous thing is overheating. Yeah. Overheating is way more dangerous, usually. But again, I'm not a doctor. Don't take this for granted. But-
So, yes, I was about to bring it on track actually. So Revival has been developed by HeroCraft directly. How big are teams working on it, and roughly how long has it taken to develop?
Okay, so right now we have a team of 7, including myself, working on the game, and that's not counting professionals throughout HeroCraft that help us out with like QA, art-related tasks, that kind of stuff. So the core team is about 7 people.
And how long has it taken so far to develop? How long have you been working on that?
Okay, so...
Oh, you said about 5 years. Yeah, sorry, you've already answered that.
Well, it varies, because there were attempts to make it for the last 5 years, but the prototype that was showcased to me and other members of HeroCraft's management was in 2018, about June, July. And I joined the project, about September, October of that year. So yeah, kind of like almost 2 years.
And the alpha is expected to start in Q3 of 2020.
Yeah.
Which we'll throw the link up in the chat.
Been putting it in randomly as we've been talking, believe it or not, bless him.
Yeah, I've seen Freak pop it a few times.
I do have it again. Bear with me.
Yeah.
There it is.
Are you still on track for that alpha, or has COVID-19 affected your development roadmap?
We're still on track. Again, I think IT companies, games companies in general, we're at a better position. We're sort of generally more prepared than a more traditional business would.
I suppose work from home is a bit easier.
Yeah, much easier than, let's say, if you were working at a bar, right, at a pub, and actually you need to actually be there for the job. So, like the Revival team, like the development is split across cities anyway. Like I'm in Kaliningrad and a couple of our colleagues as well. Most of the programmers and Vladislav, the game's author, creator, is in Krasnodar, which is a completely different city. We have our QA, some of them are like in different parts of Europe as well. So yeah, we're already spread out. We're already used to working remotely, already used to regular Skype calls, just tracking work remotely. So it's been a bit easier than I think for a lot of teams out there. And so what was the second part of the question?
Well, I'm going to say, is it affect you on? But what was it? Speaking of disruptions, what are the biggest challenges you've faced during the development of Revival?
The game's hook. Believe it or not, the game's hook. Like, it sounds cool on paper, right? And it made sense on paper. We went through 4 different versions of the game's hook. Before we arrived was the one that we were happy with, right? So originally, only the All-Mind, only the AI could affect the game world, which was cool. It did encourage you to sort of switch your strategy up, but players felt very passive because you're always reacting. And for a game, especially for a deep game that positions itself as a strategic game, that's a bad thing. The game should be reacting to players' actions and plans, right? So we wanted the players to get more involved. So our next version, we allowed players to also launch edicts on particular regions, and that's just one way you can protect yourself from all the All-Mind's influence. Then we thought, okay, so edicts are basically spells, right? They're fancy spells they can cast on a particular area. But to be honest, like again, my opinion, they're much deeper than you would see like a typical spell in any other game. To give you an example. We have an edict that sort of decreases in this case, the temperature of a region. So basically, if you cast it on a desert area, over several turns, it will turn it into a snowy area, right? And this edict can be used both in sort of peacefully and aggressively. So for example, let's say you're pursuing a diplomatic option, you try to win the diplomacy sort of victory.
Yeah.
And you don't have a lot of troops, and you see that your neighbor from a neighboring region is amassing troops to sort of attack you. You have no way to protect yourself. You can call in your closest allies since you've been sort of pursuing diplomatic relationships with them, but it's going to take time for them to arrive and sort of protect your region.
You could turn your area into an Arctic wasteland to
and
stop troops going to freeze to death when they come in.
Well, right now the Arctic Edict has two main influences on units. Number one, it slows their movement speed, unless the players from an Arctic tribe, which actually gain the bonus, right? And it also decreases the shooting sort of range of ranged units, long-range units. So not only the Snow Edict is the decreased temperature edict is gonna give you enough time, right? Because you can cast it across several regions, so it's gonna take them longer to reach your town. You can also sort of ask and bring in close quarters units that specialize in melee combat, that they gain an advantage over long range units. And that's just one example. And you can also use it in agriculture. That same edict, for example, your tribe, which is again as an emissary and revival, you can sort of decide which tribe you want to lead, and each tribe has a few like quirks and differences. They're each used to a very particular climate. So let's say a desert tribe will actually start losing health in a snowy area over time because they hate it, right? They're not suitable at all. So where was I? So yeah, tribes.
So you can put that effect onto some. You can put one of your lands to defend it. But you can also put it on another one to weaken them before you attack.
Yeah, and let's say your neighboring region just happens to be a desert. Well, you can use that same decreased temperature edict to sort of make it way more suitable for your tribe that you've decided to lead, right? Again, so we tried not making them just sort of dumb, straightforward spells that do straightforward things. Ideally, each edict is just a tool that players can use depending on their strategy in a variety of ways.
Yeah,
right?
Depending on how you use it, has a different effect, like your strategy and your thought process.
Yeah, and another example is we had an edict, we've disabled it for now, but we'll probably bring it later, that made the sea more toxic, right? And it prevented ships from moving around. But not only that, since the sea became toxic, you had crabs sort of emerging from the sea, basically spawning on the land because the seas were becoming toxic. And they would roam the region and would attack any units that would sort of get within the general area. Nice. But if you kill these crabs, you gain access to a rare material that you can use to craft better weapons. So you can see how all of these
your sea toxic.
Yeah, so you can see how all of these systems are sort of tied together, right? So an edict isn't just a dumb spell that, oh, cool, seas are toxic. It actually influences the game map, influences and is tied to other game mechanics.
It sounds very similar to that thing kind of Magic the Gathering where you get a card that at first seems useless, but paired up with certain cards or a certain strategy becomes unstoppable.
Kind of like that, yeah.
Yeah. Freak Show's just put in the chat that he's signed up to the alpha.
Which comes in quite handy for the next question, actually.
Yeah.
Anyone that takes part in the alpha also gets a digital calendar, which is pretty cool. How did that idea come about?
Well, thank you for the compliment. Well, I was browsing through the work of our artist, like our concept artist, Oleg Sabanov, and it was some great stuff. And I thought, okay, I like it. Our team likes it. Why don't we just share some of that with potential fans? Sort of give them a teaser of what the game world and lore, the kind of like lore and the world that we're looking for, the aesthetical stuff of it. And you can check out Oleg's work on the game's website as well. Like he did the promotional banner, like the first thing that you see on the game's webpage. He did the emissary, the first officially announced emissary that you see, Tano Olazar. That's his art as well.
Just right. Digital calendar and wallpaper. Sorry, we got that wrong. We missed the wallpaper now. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, it is the same two images that we've used for both the wallpaper and the calendar. So, apology accepted. No offense.
So how did you come up with the idea to give that calendar away? Sorry, I interrupted you there.
Yeah, so I decided, why don't we do it? Why don't we just give it away? And anybody who signs up gets that calendar immediately as a sort of a thank you. And there's a little appetizer before the alpha hits.
Yeah, it's quite cool. I like the idea. Normally you get signed to an alpha or a beta, but this time you get something to. You can play the alpha, and it's for you. You're going to go pre-order it. If it's not for you, well, I got a cool looking digital calendar from it. I I didn't
Yeah.
waste my time. Yeah, I
Yeah.
quite like that. It's novel and it's hook, as we mentioned so many
Thank
times
you.
tonight.
Yeah. Well, again, it's a small thing, but I'm happy that somebody's out there who appreciates
It's,
appreciates.
it's just one of those things for me. It's one of those things that when you get big games like Ubisoft or EA do betas and stuff, we know it's sort of like server testing and stuff all the time. So it's like, oh, you got to play it a bit early for a week. Be happy. This is kind of like, we really appreciate you trying it out and helping us find bugs and stuff. So here's a little cool digital calendar to keep.
Yeah, that
Well,
was
no,
the
it's a
idea.
digital calendar. Once you've made one file, it costs you nothing because you just copy that file. But I still think it's quite quick. It shows a lot of thought for the community and the audience that are playing it.
Thank you.
But yeah, but it's Revival's going to be a PC release.
Yeah, that's the main version.
Any plans for a console release at all?
Yes, but like the goal is if we don't like if your PC version is crap, right? Releasing a console version is going to be good. It's not going to happen, right? So the goal is we make sure like our current version, like D1 version, is right and it's on the right path, and it's actually a game that people want to engage with. And if that works out, then yeah, we're open and we already have plans to do a console version, even a mobile version, because the original Revivals 1 and 2 were mobile games. And to this day, there's still a following of fans, mostly like in Russian speaking territories, that are still begging for a return of the series. So when we announced the game for them, it was just like a holiday, right? They were just
Christmas.
happy. Yeah, Christmas came early, so to speak. So yeah, there are definitely plans to do other versions of the game, but we need to make sure like the PC
this one
version
right
is in the right
first.
place. Yeah.
So, is there a release date for a Revival?
Not a solid release date yet. We do have a tentative sort of window, which
You've got a
our
window.
current plans are we want to do a closed alpha. We want to do a public alpha before the year's end, right? But that again depends on the reception of the closed alpha. Depends on the kind of feedback that we get, right? If the feedback is something that we expect, right, and something that we can work with for a couple of months, make the game even better, and release it publicly, then that's exactly what we'll do. If the feedback is drastically different, let's say people hate the hook, don't like the game, don't get the hook at all, or feel that it doesn't really add enough depth or like a fresh experience to the game, that will take longer. I have no problem delaying the alpha until we get it right, like the public alpha. And once the public alpha is there, provided that reception is good, we'll take some time, work on the game a bit more, get a bit more like content there, more emissaries, just more stuff in there, and do an early access launch. And again, depending on the feedback, the game might take us 3, 6 months, 8 months from early access to launch. So hopefully we'll release the game in 2021, but we don't have an issue with delaying it slightly just to make sure we get it right.
Fair enough. It's nice to know that you really want to work on any bugs or any issues. Not
Yeah.
many, not lots of AAA game publishers actually care about the bugs and that. Trust me, I've played some games with some horrendous bugs.
God,
Contacted
we know.
them, and
As reviewers, we know.
fuck me. It's like, do you care about the people that have paid good money for your game, or is it more of a case of, you've paid for it, fuck off? That's how they feel. That's what it feels like.
Well-
But with indie games, in fact, I was playing someone that we had on a couple of weeks ago, Adam. I was playing No Mancer on stream. Him and another one of the devs came into the stream and were working on bugs that minute when they saw them.
Nice.
I had,
nice one, yeah.
I got to a boss level, and the boss started moving around. I gone, that shouldn't be moving. I was like, I didn't know any difference. I thought that was a cool little thing that the boss was moving around, so you had to chase it. But no, apparently it was supposed to be stationary. So it was one of those, a case of bug gone.
Yeah, well, again, smaller teams, smaller companies, I think they have to care more. Otherwise, what the hell are you doing it? You're not going to succeed. You're not going to survive.
Do you think part of that comes back to money as well? Like, as a small indie team, you don't have the money to hire QA testers, so community feedback's more important. Your alpha and your beta is your QA testing.
Not really. Again, keep this in mind though. Okay, this is a relatively small team, especially compared to like Firaxis, right?
Yeah.
Another big teams working on these big titles in the genre. But HeroCraft is a medium-sized company. Yeah? We have over 100 people just working on a variety of games, right? We're both developers and publishers.
Yeah.
And we do have the advantage of we have a proper QA team that takes a look at all of our titles before we launch. So for us, sorry, it's a matter of I'm more worried about the hook landing and the hook really sort of engaging potential fans of the game and fans of the genre rather than the bugs. But still, you have to keep in mind forex strategies are probably one of the hardest genres to work in and to work within because there's such a variety of complex systems intertwining, right? You can't really test everything. You need that level of scale of testing that only a public alpha can provide, for example, or an early access build. And that's one of the main reasons we want to do it rather than full launch. Even if like we think, okay, the game in terms of its game mechanics, its concept is engaging, and we have the feedback to prove it, I'd still want to do at least 3 to 5 months of early access just to make sure that we cover the majority of bugs that one can encounter. It is a deep game, it's a complex game, so who knows what will like we find bugs, like our QA team finds bugs on a regular basis from one iteration to another. So I'm sure players will find even more.
I just loved that. I'm just noticing the chat Freak's trying to inflame the gaming wars. Going back to what you were saying earlier about perfecting the game before you come to console. There's a Freak just said another reason we are the master race. We perfect things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Let's sign up to the PC master race there.
Yeah. And again, PC is just well, I play mostly PC games. It's just more comfortable for myself as well. But yeah, PC is the home genre of the forex strategy, sort of the home platform. We want to make sure that's in the right place.
So what's the best way for the viewers to keep up to date with news and updates for Revival?
We've already mentioned it, guys. Go to the game's website, revival4x.com. Sign up for the mailing list because we're going to be sending out emails sort of teasing game mechanics, bits of lore, sort of giving players a taste of our mind, sort of piece of our mind, sort of writing about what went into the design process of Revival, as well as telling more about game mechanics and how we feel they're going to improve like the genre and solve some of the problems that we've mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, we like to end the interviews by allowing you to speak directly to reviewers about anything that we've might have failed to mention, or that you'd like to add on yourself. So, is there anything you'd like to say?
This was a time well spent. I can only hope this was as much fun listening to these guys. It was fun talking to you. So that's it. Thank you for having me.
It's given us so much insight into. We've had indie devs on the last couple of weeks, and we had a YouTuber on to look at like building channel stuff. Mm-hmm. Seeing it from a business perspective and how an indie dev gets a publisher has been absolutely fantastic. He's been. I want to say like he's been really intelligent. I don't want to sound like being patronising, but seeing it from that side, how you pick an indie game and how you market it has been, what you look at has been fantastic.
I'm really new to this side of things as well. Like I'm literally the last 6 weeks is where I've really been put in the deep end, and I'm learning so much just from speaking to yourself and other devs. It's fantastic. It really is.
Awesome. Well, glad this was fun and engaging.
It's been brilliant. Well, guys, go
any questions from the chat at all before we let V go home, because we've kept him long enough now, I think.
I know you won't have to use your channel points for this. This is free time. Use it wisely.
Go on, Ed.
Yeah, just while we wait for questions to come in, I'm looking forward to actually playing the game. I'm going to sign up to the alpha.
Thank you. Yeah.
Give it a good going.
And again, the fun behind games of like this complexity, we always have like crazy stuff going on. At some point, like a couple of fun bugs. Found an emissary, sort of dancing in the field of corpses while a region was burning. And I thought, that's...
Please tell me you left that in.
Yeah. Well, like we used a similar setup in the game's trailer. If you look in like the first 5 or 10 seconds,
Yeah.
right, you'll see an emissary sort of playing around with his like staff, right? And this is where the idea came from. Because it's just randomly looking for regions, you just see a guy dancing around, flames everywhere. We have like a ton of like cool, funny bugs.
See, when I saw that emissary with a staff, I immediately thought of the Ori from Stargate SG-1.
Oh well, I immediately thought Jedi. To be honest.
Ah, interesting. I just thought
No, the hood. No,
yeah, with the hood and the staff and the Ori is great. The Ori is powerful. Like I think it was like season 9 and 10 of SG-1, like the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, it's the Ori.
Keep in mind, this is the most again because this is the first emissary, right? We want it to be the most relatable one, right? You know, I'm not gonna say run of the mill, but the most standard one, right? Because he's like the peacekeeper.
Is he like the easy setting? Or
No. What for us, emissaries are more like tools, right? We really want them, just like factions in the Endless Legend, which I think they did a great job with it. Like every faction in Endless Legend allows you to sort of look at the game's mechanics in a slightly different way, because they're all very different, and it's awesome. It really sort of adds depth and replayability to the game. And I want emissaries and revival to do the same thing for revival, basically. So I want every emissary to not only be sort of unique in terms of their looks, we want them to actually bring something new to the table in terms of game mechanics, or maybe sort of remix them in a way that they really encourage a different sort of play style for players. So, and in terms of visuals, again, this is Tano Olazar is the most standard one, but we are gonna go like crazier and crazier and crazier with the visuals and the animations.
I mean, Kitty Merch just said, great, thank you for the stream in the chat. We've not finished the podcast yet, Kim. We've still got the trailer and the news to come, although we are going to let V go. But I think I might be putting Kitty Merch in touch with you over the next few days.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I think as an indie dev, I think he's got a lot out of this as looking for a publisher. And I think you might have sold HeroCraft to him. I suspect you might have sold HeroCraft to Troglodyte Games.
Again, you have Layla's contacts, my contacts.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and email. And
we'll put you across. But thank you so much for your time, V.
Likewise.
We really appreciate it tonight, and thank you for being so open and engaging with our viewers. We really appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Yep,
thanks for the fun time.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Take care.
We'll catch up with you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
So that's that.
That was that was something I tried doing something different by bringing a publisher in rather than indie dev. I think that was really fucking insightful. I thought it was really good.
Definitely.
But let's move on to trailers and news, because every week we go, we'll have 30 minutes for the interview and then 30 minutes for the podcast. We're an hour and a half in already.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the longer the podcast, the better. It depends on what we got going on, but each podcast will always be different. But going into the trailers, I'm really excited for the next 2 games we've got coming up. I'm going to go into the trailer for this one straight away, and then we're going to talk a little bit about it, because the voice actor for this...
Oh my god!
You know exactly why.
The voice is spine-chilling anywhere, but the voiceover, the actor... Yes,
so
just go.
Let's go for it.
Oh my god, this is good. It's so good.
The thing is, though, I recognise this mask
blood
from
on
somewhere.
my hands, washed away by the unrelenting rain. A believer would see forgiveness. That is not what I am.
I'm trying not to speak over the voiceover. Fucking fantastic.
Tonight, I take my first steps towards my grand plan.
My mic was muted the
Slashing
whole
through
time.
their skin. The man behind the mask will stand before them and finish what they started. To expose
I'm
the
quite funny that you were just
sins
going
of
about
the world.
Metroidvania games, and our first trailer's a Metroidvania.
Oh, yes.
Nice segue.
I can't wait. I really want to play this so bad.
Yeah, that looks so much fun. But yeah, I'll let you tell.
As it's a Kickstarter game, the voice actor. So yeah, Steam Dolls, a fast-paced, dark Metroidvania starring David Hayter. Now, if you don't know that name, you bloody well ought to, because he is the voice of Solid Snake and Naked Snake in Metal Gear Solid. You know, the big fuck-off game for Kojima. One of my favourite games of pretty much all time.
But yeah, it's Solid Snake and Naked Snake. Like,
it's Snake.
Yeah.
Just Snake.
I was going to put just Snake, but then I realised it's like Liquid Snake and all sorts else. So,
he's done so many voices in Metal Gear anyway, and a few other games actually. But when I saw that, I was like,
Yeah, I mean this
a Kickstarter game with such a big voice actor.
It's amazing. I'm just going to go to the Kickstarter because I want to see if it's changed before. Let you speak.
I'm going to talk about it. So, among other perks that we've got listed, the back for the Kickstarters, the backers will be able to get their hands on a limited PS4 and Nintendo Switch physical release of the game, featuring exclusive, never to be seen again designs, both available in standard and collector's edition. But you'll need to hurry because there's only 250 for the Switch and 100 for the PS4.
That is limited edition.
That is very limited. And I can tell you now it's going to be worth a few bob, especially because it's got David Bloody Hayter on it.
Yep.
But in other news for it, those inclined to do so will be able to hack and sneak their way through the evil and world in a free extended demo for PC. Available on June 15th, so I'm going to be keeping my eyes on that. Get ready to plunge into the dark underbelly of a corrupted steampunk city. It's set to release in 2021 on PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. Wait, they're not doing a collector's edition for Xbox?
No.
Ouch.
250 for Switch, 100 for PS4.
Ouch.
Yeah, collector's edition only for Switch and PS4. No collector's edition for
Looks
Xbox.
like I have to get it on the bloody Switch then.
Or PC.
But they haven't got it for the PC. Like,
no collector's edition for the PC.
No collector's edition. Ouch
So
again.
PC and Xbox One is digital only. PS4 is digital, but extremely limited physical edition.
What?
If you've got a PC one, where would you put the disc?
Shush you. But yeah, they're at 17k of a 26k goal with basically a month left to go, 29 days.
Actually, they're not.
Are they not?
They were at 17k of 17,000, 26,000 when I wrote this at 1 p.m. this afternoon.
Oh.
I've just checked, and they're at 23,000 of 26,000 right now.
They're what? Sorry.
Oh, just gone up to £23,645 of 26,000.
Well, there is the Kickstarter link anyway.
So yeah, that's gone up. That's gone up by about £6,000 since I wrote that at 1 o'clock.
I mean, I'm not surprised. They've got such a big bloody name in there. He's probably put it in himself just so he can get a collector's edition.
Yeah. But yeah, it is.
But I swear I've seen that face mask somewhere. It is bugging me. It's been bugging me since you sent it across.
I know it is.
Who?
General Grievous from Star Wars.
Nope.
It is.
It doesn't look like that to me.
I'm looking at the logo right now. That's General Grievous from Star Wars, the big robot dude with 4 arms.
I know who, because General Kenobi says hello there.
Yeah, that's General Grievous's mask.
I'll take your word on it, but it doesn't seem like it to me. I've seen it somewhere else, not in a film, and it's pissing me off. But we're going to move on to the next game now. This one had me crying with laughter. It's called Just Die Already.
Yeah, play it. Just play it.
This is my kind of game.
Set in a bizarre imaginary world, Just Die Already sees competitors of the more serious persuasion complete outrageous challenges in order to reserve their place in the world's nicest retirement home. A mayhem sandbox filled to the brim with crazy tools and fun factions, it's a game in which players, either solo or with up to 3 friends, can delight in the experimental, working out ever more incredible ways to secure ratio the game's famous golden tickets. Now, if that sounds mental, here's the trailer.
Oh, there's a penis. There's a penis.
This just looks fucking bizarre.
Oh, he's grabbed him by the penis. Oh no. They really like the penis guy.
This is face, which we're going to get into in a minute, which, when you find out the developer, he doesn't know why. It's just mental. It's like old people killing each other. Crazy.
There's lightsabers.
There's no lightsaber. The heating balloon pop, down you go.
Oh, this is just mental. This game.
I like to bring the silence up sometimes when I can. They've got gliding wings now.
He's got one leg.
Fucking ladder, get down here.
This is the fact you're playing against old people. Wait, is that Maneater? Oh, that game just looks fantastic. I really cannot wait.
It looks like, I mean, it's made by the same developers who made Goat Simulator.
Oh, that's why it looks so good.
That's why the physics look so good and stuff. So I'm going to bastardize this name badly, but Armin Ibrizak said when we started making the game, there wasn't all this going on, jesting around at the global craziness that's happening in the world right now. So it does feel a little weird introducing such a ridiculous, over-the-top sandbox game when the world is so grim at the moment. That said, maybe supergluing a rocket pack to the back of an octogenarian and sending him flying into a construction site just to see what happens is a type of escape we all need right now. Also, I forgot to put it in this bit. So you can like put a rocket on the back of an old guy and send him into a construction site and stuff, right? But they announced earlier on after I wrote this that they're adding a glue gun to the game. So instead of strapping that rocket to an old guy, you can use a glue gun to put it onto a bicycle and just ride a rocket-powered bike at people.
I may have to contact them just so I can try and get a review code.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, we know you can put this on that and do it. But what if we put a glue gun where you could put anything on anything? So you could like just find a shark in the water and put a firework, put a glue firework to it, and just launch it into the city.
Do you reckon I could put freaking laser beams attached to freaking sharks' heads?
Oh, I wish we could. I hope we can. It just looks fucking mental.
It's my kind of game. Other than like death and destruction, it is batshit crazy.
It released on PC this summer, but you won't have to wait too long before you can escape to the game's crazy world. A demo version will be available on Steam shortly, with players able to wishlist it now in order to be notified of the game's release. So you can go wishlist it now. You'll be notified when the free demo's out. And yeah, that looks fucking mental.
I'll let you take this one as what you told me earlier. So we'll move on to this one.
Right.
We're going to tone it down a little bit now. Do you want the trailer first, or are you going to explain it first?
Yeah, this is Pandora, Chains of Chaos. Just show it and I'll explain it after. It looks, God, and it's Llama Games. I love the name of the studio. Party Llama Games. Yeah, it looks gorgeous and fun, but it is actually a really good, quite a deep game. And I'm hoping to have the developer of this game on soon.
Awesome.
So we'll talk directly. This is made by a good friend of mine called Nerys. She's been working on this for a couple of years. It's a bit different. It's not the madcap mentalness we're just showing you, will just die already. But it's a beautiful, quite a deep game in a Greek, ancient Greek setting with mythical creatures and stuff. Yeah, I just quite like it. I'm maybe being a bit nepotistic by using my platform to show my friends games.
No, it's fine.
And you get to ride a pig. Why would you want to ride
I'm going to name it Spider Pig.
Make it Peter Parker.
Peter Porker.
Spider-Ham.
Harry Potter. No
Yeah,
plan.
so that's Pandora Change of Chaos. It says there, it comes 30th of July. It's my good friend Aris has made that. So in Pandora Change of Chaos, players will immerse players into a beautiful and colourful Greek world with enemies, quests, NPCs, and areas to explore. It's the story of a young adventurer, Pandora, who unknowingly leashes destruction onto her world. So battling her own curiosity and guilt, she quickly finds that she's overshadowed by the tangible threats of demons and monsters. Pandora was prepared for a life outside her quiet fishing village, but now she finds herself thrust into the fight at the centre of the place she called home. Was this what she intended to do all along, or can she fix what she has broken? So it's kind of that thing of like, you created this, it's your responsibility to fix it, or is it like, yeah, I wanted to fuck this place up all along, so I don't know. I get the sense there might be multiple endings and multiple storylines in this. I've not had it confirmed yet, but I'm going to try getting Nerys on in the next week or two to speak to us and clarify it for us. Yeah, I just really love that. And also, if you like that trailer, you like what you saw, there is a free demo available now on Steam. So if you have a lot of play of it, you send.
Let me just get the link. 1 second. There it is. There is the link in the chat for it. But moving on, we had him on, I think it was the second podcast?
It was episode 2.
It was episode 2.
And I'm wearing my my medallion.
It is our good friend at Arctic Neck's RP Golf 2.
Yeah. This is just kind of following up on what we do with indie devs and how we want to make them into rock stars and stuff and make people aware of the games, as well as just kind of pat ourselves on the back a little bit here and going. We had Ricardo on 4 weeks ago to talk about RP Gold 2. The trailer's just come out 2 days ago. That's how quick, that's how in advance we'll get these developers in for you. He really wanted to show it off to you, but he
wasn't allowed to.
Well, he wasn't allowed to show what he had, and he didn't have a proper trailer ready. So yeah, if you're watching us in episode 2, and if you wasn't, pop onto the YouTube channel and go check that out, or stoppresents.com. You can find all the previous episodes there. But yeah, we spent a long time talking to Ricardo about this game that's coming out, but we didn't have anything to show you.
Until today, thankfully.
Now we can. Today we can do. So we just want to throw that in a little bit and just let you see what we were talking about way back in episode 2.
I know, right? That goes back. That's 4 episodes. Soon it's going to be like episode 20, and we're going to be like, yeah, remember episode 2?
Yeah.
But that is it for the trailers. And I can safely say, for me, Just Die Already has won the trailer battle. Because
I knew that's one of those that's just, that came in. It's one of those, it came in on Thursday. And like you did a fucking day late. I have to sit on this now till next week. I wanted to blast out through social media and everything, but it's like, it's batshit crazy. It's fucking mental. I want it for the podcast. So I've sat on that trailer since last Thursday. Because
Oof.
That looks fun.
But yeah, moving on to the road, I'll let you take this one.
Right, so yeah, we're gonna move on into news now. And this is one that it's kind of the way technology is going, but one I'm not sure I'm entirely happy with. It'd be nice if we started Vasiliy about, so I could speak to him about this and get his thoughts on it, because he's an expert on monetization. But Zula, which I don't know if anyone's heard of Zula.
I've never heard of it.
Let's play the trailer for Zula. We have the trailer there.
Yep, we do.
Let's play the trailer first. So this is Zula. Like I said, never heard of it until today.
No, I've never heard of it. Yeah, there's 12 million people.
15 million players.
Capture the enemy flag.
It looks brilliant.
Kind of looks like CS:GO gone wrong.
Yeah. But yeah, this is 15 million players. It's the biggest game in Turkey.
I mean, okay, that's cool.
Like, it dominates esports in Turkey, which is, probably not heard of it. Here's pretty much, I don't know, in a case like we play CSGO here, they play Zula over there. But you know, you play it, there's millions of pounds in the prize pool, millions of euros or whatever it is in the prize pool to be won. Free to play. Now, the only reason I bring it up is not because I'm trying to go like, oh, Zula, no one's ever heard of it, but it's massive in Turkey. So it's Turkey's most popular game in 2019, but they've just teamed up with Anzu.io. Right?
Never heard of that.
So
again.
now, during the game, you can get you will get personalised advertisements in game.
Ouch.
So what that means is, if you've been searching for Coca-Cola, suddenly that billboard that had some made-up thing on it in game is now going to have a Coca-Cola advert for me and a Sneak energy drink advert for you on it.
Wouldn't yours be like Strongbow?
Yeah, it'd be strong. Well, probably Coca-Cola because I drink a lot of fucking rum. I only drink Strongbow when I'm streaming, so I don't get wankered. But yeah, you know, so the Turkish game market has over 32 million gamers in 2019. Represents a colossal, largely untapped opportunity for advertisers. So the partnership between Anzu and Zula will give brands, for the first time, the ability to pragmatically reach Turkish gamers via Zula's massive and engaged audience base, which includes a huge chunk of the Turkish game market. A free-to-play first-person shooter game created by local games, Zula takes its place on stealth missions to locations throughout the Middle East, including Istanbul, northern Iraq, using a hyper-realistic graphic interface. Anzu's technology will empower Zulu to monetize in-game objects such as walls, billboards, and vehicles by converting them into highly viewable ads.
I'm not okay with that.
Yeah.
The fact I know, like, social media sites are listening to you and your phone's always listening to you pisses me off.
But how does this game get highly personalised ads?
They obviously, cookies. Yeah, no, I'm not happy about
If I install Zula on my PC, is it looking at my browsing history to give me personalised ads?
Slotchy, here, can you imagine Badger in a CSGO cartoon game, Zola struggling, especially when he struggles on SnowRunner? I would love to see Badger play CSGO, actually.
I would happily take part in that. And CSGO, I hate FPS and PvP, so yeah. But yeah, I just find that it's the way the world's going, and we get personal ads on Facebook and shit, and we all put Alexas in our... Well, I don't, but I know most people put Alexas and Google Docs in their homes and shit. So yeah, I'm just thinking like... Yeah, it's in the way it's worded. An added bonus, gamers and viewers alike will benefit from in-game ads that directly mimic real-world ads, adding more realism and authenticity to the gameplay. Alright, you got a Coca-Cola advert up there, it makes the game more real. No, don't you just mean tapping my fucking data?
Wait,
how are you getting this
I've
data?
just had the best thought. You know, it's like a really big e-sport in Turkey. What if one of the competitors has been watching Pornhub? Big billboard in their game, and they switch to it. It's just fucking Backdoor Sluts 9.
This is it, like where are they getting the data from to make it better? Because you can't. That sounds like real world ads. So it sounds like stuff like Coca-Cola and
Yeah, obviously, yeah, Coke,
Strongbow or whatever.
Yeah,
but I'm not searching them in game. So they listen to my voice chat with my team to see what we talk about, or
I hope I never ever play that game because they are gonna hate my voice chat.
you know what I mean? If me and you were talking in voice chat, and I said, "Oh yeah, we're going to say, oh no, I went for a Sunday dinner with my parents," and then I get a fucking advert for New Zealand beef on billboard. You know what I mean? It says this is actually it's a good thing, but where are they getting the data from to personalise the ads?
That is a bit dodgy.
It freaks me out a little bit.
Anyway,
Maybe I'm making a bigger thing of it than I should be.
Yeah, go on. Move on to the next one. I'm definitely taking the last piece of news on this one. I'm going to fanboy over it.
Right. So next one is
Total War. I do apologise for Ben tonight. He's teething so badly, bless him.
right. So Total War Saga Troy. Right. So this is the next. It's not the next Total War game, but it's kind of a sideline.
Quick.
Total War Saga. Yeah.
Hold on 1 second. I'm childing up.
You're childing up. There we go.
He wants to
Hello,
be on
man.
camera tonight. Total War. Here's the trailer. Sorry.
Rage, goddess,
It doesn't show any gameplay here.
sin of the rage of Peleus' son, Achilles.
It looks impressive. It looks brilliant. All this is in-game engine footage.
Looks amazing.
Looks amazing. Doesn't show any gameplay footage, but this is in-game engine, so I'm sure this is cutscenes and shit. And
Yeah, this will be cutscenes.
like I said, it's part of the Total War franchise, but it's kind of like a sideline story.
Wait, is this Greek or Romantic?
It's Troy. It's Greek, isn't it? It's Troy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like a sideline to the Total War series. It's kind of like a spin-off game called Total War Saga Troy. If you're a fan of the Total War games, I'm sure you know what you're going to expect, and that looks impressive as hell.
I mean, if this is the graphics, even I might look into it.
Well, there's a reason why you might want to. There's a reason I'm showing you it, not just because it's like, oh yeah, here's the trailer for it.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I mean. If this is the graphics, I want to see these graphics when you play.
Yeah, it looks amazing.
What are the children?
The reason I
of
put it
men
in news and
that
not
as leaves that
trailers
drop at the
is
wind's
because
breath?
Sega Europe and the Creative Assembly today announced that the Total War Saga Troy will launch exclusively via Epic Game Store, which I know you love, Ed.
I wouldn't say I love it. Mine got hacked the other week.
Ouch.
I've only just got it back.
So it's going to launch exclusively on Epic Games on the 13th of August. Right? But it's going to launch free to keep forever for players who download it in the first 24 hours.
Wait, when's it coming out?
13th of August.
13th of August. Right, I'm going to make note of that.
Yeah. So basically, if you download it on the 13th, it's free. Go get it on the 14th.
You're
shit,
fucked.
You're paying for it. That's why I put it in news. But yeah, using Total War's BAFTA award-winning marriage of grand turn-based strategy and spectacular real-time battles, the Total War Saga Troy plunges players into the legendary Bronze Age conflict of the Trojan War,
Yeah.
where they assume the roles of Achilles, Hector, and many other legendary heroes as they fight to defend the great city of Troy or raze it to the ground. Thanks to Epic, we're able to offer Total War title free on its launch day. It's usually an exciting thing for us to be able to do for our players, says Tim Heaton, Chief Studios Officer at Sega Europe. Not only does this mean that we can bring the tales and legends of Troy to a wide audience through Epic's massive platform, but also means new players will get to try Total War for the first time, experiencing the unique gameplay that the series is famous for.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I mean, it looked amazing. It says at the beginning it's in-game engine footage. I'm assuming they're getting around that by showing you cutscenes, not gameplay.
Yes.
But it's fucking free on day of release.
That's crazy. I'll tell you what, I will give Epic where the credit's due. They have done fantastic with their games at the minute. GTA, Civilization, Borderlands Handsome Jack Collection, and whatever the fourth one's going to be.
Yeah, they've done
I mean,
really well.
it
with
has
free
been
games.
leaked, but I cannot
They've
remember
been
it.
massive.
They've been
but
on
yeah,
it.
put August 13th in your diary, people. And grab yourself a free copy of Total War Saga Troy.
And for the last piece of news, which kind of makes me happy but sad at the same time, it's from Sega. They've announced a new console. Kind of.
Yep. Kind of, sort of.
Yeah, let's show you.
Yeah, the only trailer we've got is in Japanese.
Yeah.
高橋は
It makes it
カ
better
ラーじゃ
though.
ないと楽しくないと宣言してから
Yeah,
30年。あのゲームギアが新しくなって帰ってくる。
They're bringing back
That's
all
what I
the-
mean. I can't. They brought back the Game Boy. They made a new
セ
one.
ガ設立60周年を記念してミニを超えるミクロサイズに
Kind
ゲ
of.
Rank it to fuck.
ームギア
I
ミ
am
ク
never
ロ
going to be able to play that.
選べる4つのカラーバリエーション。
It's a 1.3.
世界中に愛されたカラー液晶携帯ゲーム機ゲームギアの魅力をミクロなボディにギュギュッと凝縮。
No,
ボ
you
ディカラ
buy
ーご
one,
と
you
に
get
それぞれ違う
4
4
games
つの
on
ゲー
game
ムを
Gear,
収
you
録。
Oh, is it
Sega
four? Oh,
to
it's
jeba kore.
four. I got
Black.
confused with
Each
it.
one has 4 different games
ソ
on
ニ
it.
ック・ザ・ヘッジホッ
Right.
ク、ぷよぷよ
You got Sonic the Hedgehog there.
Outrun.
Outrun.
2、ロイヤルストーン、
Royal
開かれし時の扉、
on the black one.
アクションの名作がいっぱい。
Blue
ブル
one.
ー、
Right. See, I was.
ソニック
I'd
テイ
probably
ル
lose
ス、
it. I would as well.
ガンス
Yeah.
ター・ヒーロー
Sonic
ズ、
and Tails, Gunstar Heroes.
シルバンテイル、
Sylvian Tail.
バクバクアニマル世界飼育係選手権。シリーズ全部入りだ。
Yellow, might as well
イエ
call
ロ
it
ー、
Shining Force.
Yeah.
シャイニング・フォース・ガイデン、遠征、写真
Whatever
の
that
国へ。
weird thing is at the end.
シャイニング・フォース・ガイデン2、写真の覚醒。
But yeah,
シャイニング・フォース・ガイデン、ファイナル・コンフリクト。謎ぷよ、アルルのルー。
1.3 inch screen. That means it's smaller than
ラ
the
ストバイ
original
ブル
Game
もあ
Boy
るよ。
screen.
レッド女神転生ガイデン、ラストバイブル。
Again,
女神転生ガイデン、ラストバイブルスペシャル。
Go on it.
ザ・ GG 忍び。コラムス。
Yeah, it's
さ
just
ら
so
に
each different
レ
colour.
ッドカット出ちゃうビッグウィンドウミクロも登場。
Big
い
window.
つでもど
So
こで
they,
も
they,
ミ
they've
クロが
even
楽
added
しい。だから
accessories
私
for
は
them.
ゲ
Yeah,
ーム
it's
ギ
a
アミクロ。
final 1.3
Amazon
mm screen,
楽天
and
デ
then
ック
you
ス
can buy
セガスターにて
a
限定発売。
1.3 inch screen, and then you
4
can buy the
色
big
同時
window
購入
micro
特典
at the top so
ビ
you
ッ
can
グウィ
see
ンドウ
it
ミクロを
properly.
プレゼン
Yeah,
That's crazy.
It's crazy and it's ridiculous. But yeah, let me just find the games that are actually on there. Give me a second.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Freak, welcome back, and also yes, I'd most probably break it just by looking at it.
Yeah, it's ridiculously
But
tiny.
that's about all I remember for the Sega is Sonic and Outrun. I don't remember any of the other games.
I used to love Fantasy Star. Psycho Fox on the Master System. Alex the Kid.
Is that on there?
No, it's not on
Oh,
there.
no.
None of them are on there. All the games I loved are not on there.
I'm so sorry for Ben tonight. He's being a pain at the moment.
I'm just loaded up now. I should have got that loaded before because I'm completely unprofessional. But yeah, so the games that are on there, if the black model comes with Sonic the Hedgehog, Puyo 2, Outrun and Royal Stone. The blue one is Sonic Chaos, Gunstar Heroes, Sylvan Tail, and Baku Baku Animal. The yellow one has Shining Force Gaiden, inside, Shining Force 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
And Nazpoyo Arunoru. And the red version comes with Revelations of Demon Slayer, Mega Man Tensei Gaiden, the last Bible special, the GG Shinobi, and Columns. Right?
Okay.
The hardware itself is 80mm by 43mm by 20mm. That's how fucking
I've
small
got a
this
tape
thing
measure
is.
somewhere. Hold on. Oops. It's just made a big mess. So what was
There's
it? 20mm.
80mm long
So it's that long.
by 43mm high
But that. Mate,
by
how can anyone play this?
20mm deep.
That's literally that big.
And it has a 1.15 inch display.
Oh wow! So it's about that big a screen.
That's how big the screen is. Yeah.
I'm so glad I had a
Diagonal,
tape
yeah.
measure. That's
No,
crazy.
That's diagonally. Because you measure screens from
Yeah, that's
corner
what I mean.
to
Like
diagonally.
that's that.
Yeah.
That is literally about that. That is
That's
nothing.
great. Alright.
Please
There's a
tell me you've got
single
the
mono
price.
speaker and a headphone jack.
Ooh.
It charges over USB, but can also run off 2 AAA batteries. Now, you may be wondering how exactly you're meant to play games on a 1.15-inch display.
You're not.
Which made the Game Boy Micro's 2-inch panel sound used by Samsung. Well, if you're willing to drop about $250 on a pack of all 4 consoles, Sega's including the mini version of its big window magnifying glass accessory. So you can only get the big window magnifying glass if you pay $250 for the full 4 collection.
Do you know what's bad? Is you know for a fact collectors are going to go out and buy one.
Yeah. They'll be available in Japan for about $50 individually. And we'll ship on October the 6th. But from what I was reading about 4 o'clock this afternoon, I think it's sold out.
No.
I know the yellow and red had sold out by 3 o'clock this afternoon. And I think the black and blue had almost gone as well. There's no word yet on the Western release. It's a Japan-only release.
Oh, there you go then. I mean, that explains everything. I love Japan. I love the Japanese, but man, they are batshit crazy.
Yeah, sorry to tease you with something you can never buy. I don't know why you'd want to. But,
I got really excited for it. I got really excited for it. And then...
You'd never be able to play it, dude.
Not with these fat thumbs.
No. I mean, put your thumbs together. I think it's bigger than the console.
It really is. It's crazy.
Look, I'll stick to my purple Game Boy.
You know what? I found mine the other day. I found my original Game Boy Color.
It's wonderful when you find an old Game Boy, isn't it?
Yeah. I just need to find batteries or my old battery pack for it.
But yeah, so I didn't show you that to say like, oh, go out and buy it. I showed it to go look what the fuck Japan's up to. This is mental.
I love Japan. I really do love Japan. They are batshit crazy.
Well, we thought there was a big Sega announcement coming, and we thought that was the big Sega announcement. And it turned out about 5 o'clock this afternoon. It turned out it wasn't. The big Sega announcement we've been waiting for is they've introduced fog gaming, which sounds like it's going to be Japan only again.
Okay.
But in Japan, arcades are still massive in Japan, whereas they're not so much over here.
Oh yeah.
Right. So they're going to hook up arcade games to the cloud so you can play them at home and the arcade's shut.
Brilliant.
They're just fucking we're just gonna This big announcement we all thought might have been a new console was no. Just when the arcade's shut, they can still play the machines at home on your PC. They're calling it fog. It's not fully cloud, so they're calling it fog gaming.
Oh, God.
But yeah, I thought I'd finish with some weird, fucked up news.
That is more than weird and fucked up.
It's Japan, of course it is. But that's it. That's everything we have for you tonight, people. That's your podcast for National Egg Day. We hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you once again to V for being here and joining us for the live interview. Remember, for the Revival website and to sign up for the alpha, the link is coming up here.
Revival4x.com. Really easy to remember, but Ed's blocking the link there for you. Anyway.
Yeah. I've just completely bullshit something up, but it's fine. I can redo what I was going to do. There we go.
And thank you, everyone, for watching. As always, this is your podcast. This is your content to create. We do this for you. So if there's anything you want to see, any guests you want on, get in touch with us. Our socials are there in the middle, whichever the middle is for me right now. You can get in touch with me. You can get in touch with Ed. Let us know who and what you want on, and we'll do our best to make it happen.
Yeah, I actually came to you for someone I'd love to get on. I'm not going to spoil it in case we do, if we do get them. But that is all we have for you tonight. We are now going to go raid a very good friend of Badger's and hopefully going to be one of my close friends soon, DJ Arcus.
We're going to go raid Arcus.
We're raiding Adam. He's playing Borderlands 3. So guys, please don't go anywhere.
Adam was on the podcast a few weeks ago.
He was indeed. I've been spending a lot of time in his streams, and I can tell you now the chat could get off topic. It's brilliant. So please stay. Please tell them that the Badger'Ed podcast has sent you. Show them some love. But Thank you everyone for watching. It's been awesome. And make sure you come back for next week. But in the meantime, he's been Badger'Ed.
He's been Ed. And you've been Badger'Ed. Good night.
We will see you next week, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. When it decides to raid. It always takes so long. There we go. Laters, everyone.
Take care. Thank you for tonight.